Good evening, Minister, distinguished guests. It is exceptionally thought-provoking to address such a diverse global audience on a subject matter upon which our home jurisdictions often take different positions. What I believe brings us together is having our patients in the core of all endeavors. We recognize that harmonization on cannabis for medicinal and research purposes is limited. Taking cannabidiol as an example, it is on the market in various states as raw material, pure substance, or ready for use. As for its legal qualification, some countries may consider it a medicinal product by presentation, an extemporaneous mixture, a novel food, a supplement, or even a cosmetic, among others. It may be controlled as a narcotic, a psychotropic, both, or neither. Access to the product may be through a compassionate use program or a prescription-only protocol in one state, while its sale might not be limited to pharmacies in another. Cannabidiol is a substantiating example of the demerits attributed to the implementation of scattered systems, tantamount to disparities in the legislative and regulatory frameworks in place. Beyond the legitimate challenges that this may pose to the authorities and the medicinal cannabis industry itself, as a medical doctor, I relate to the concerns of our healthcare professionals and patients. Had we questioned the public about cannabis a few months back, the predicted response would have been the recognition that cannabis is the most commonly used illicit drug among the adult population in Malta and beyond. Possibly, response from healthcare professionals would not have been much different. I recall, on the one hand, my own days at medical school, which imparted no knowledge whatsoever on cannabis for medicinal use. On the other hand, what I was taught and practiced is that one shall only prescribe what falls within his competence. For instance, I am authorized as a doctor to prescribe eye drops for glaucoma, but would refer to an ophthalmologist in considering the case. Same applies to medicinal cannabis. As more patients learn about cannabis for medicinal purposes, primary care physicians face a growing number of patients seeking information from their trustworthy source. Even if the respective clinicians are not prescribing cannabis-based products themselves, their patients may be using it and feel the need to discuss treatment outcomes. We understand, though, that it would be very tricky to guide on the unknown. Unknown is the scenario we would have reinforced had we not adopted a regulatory approach analogous to that implemented for the pharmaceutical industry. This explicates the rationale for designating the Medicines Authority within my Parliamentary Secretary portfolio as the regulatory authority with regards to cannabis for medicinal and research purposes. The international recognition that the Malta Medicines Authority holds for its work in the regulation of medicines, be it assessments, inspections, pharmacovigilance, or other scientific contributions, is indeed being replicated for this evolving initiative. The medical community is familiar with established standards which are expected from any entity aspiring credibility and approval. cannabis for medicinal purposes should not be essentially different. In line with the national legislation and guidance issued by the Medicines Authority, producers are required to operate under good manufacturing practice and consistent with quality control systems that encompass a considerable range of analytical tests, as well as specifications for packaging and labeling of finished products. Rather than imposing restrictions on dosage forms or percentages, for example, of CBD or THC, we are resolute and vigilant on quality data with which we can ascertain that the label on the product that the doctor prescribes, the pharmacist dispenses, and the patient receives is true to its contents. Ascertaining the quality of products accessible to our patients may not, however, solve all of the unknowns. Efficacy and safety need to be addressed further. Advanced research conducted in concordance with recognized guidance is necessitated to expand the knowledge base and better inform professionals responsible for patient care. The gradual shift of the industry towards pharmaceutical presentations of cannabis for medicinal use is promising. To explore further this dynamic discipline, I have led Maltese delegations in visiting medicinal cannabis producers, analytical laboratories, dispensing pharmacies, and regulatory agencies overseas. I recall a stimulating conversation with a top researcher on cannabis for medicinal use. He recounted his experience of the fastest ever response from a journal following submission of a manuscript for prospective publication. Rejected after 10 minutes, just the time to note the term cannabis in the title, and they do not want to be associated with it. Exchanging views with pertinent experts in the field allows me to appreciate the remarkable progress put forward by major institutions while recognizing that cannabis may still represent a gray area for others. The recent publication by Marta Di Forti and colleagues in Lancet Psychiatry 2019, reporting outcomes from a multi-center case control study across Europe, sheds light on the contribution of differences in potency of cannabis and frequency of use on the incidence of psychiatric disorder. Given the availability of high-potency cannabis, this has important implications for public health, which are also being highlighted by our local psychiatrists studying cannabis and psychosis. Clinical trial registers listing current studies involving cannabis in widespread indications impart encouragement and anticipation to address important questions such as whether cannabis may serve to attenuate opioid over-reliance and the impact of whole plant extracts versus single compounds on neuropsychiatric disorders. We need to understand that when using cannabis as a general term, we are referring to a collection of hundreds of compounds, including different cannabinoids, terpenoids, flavonoids, fatty acids, and more, with varying compositions, possibly having varying effects. This issue was among the main points of discussion during a networking meeting organized by the Medicines Authority for our healthcare professionals, addressed by Professor Jorge Manzanares Robles. Such sessions are intended to present our physicians with the latest interferences from ongoing research that facilitate informed judgment on when the prescribing of cannabis for medicinal purposes may be appropriate or less so in day-to-day clinical practice. The newly launched Project 2021, Europe's largest medicinal cannabis trial enrolling 20,000 patients from different clinical settings, promises collection of real-world data and patient-reported outcomes, which, alongside randomized controlled trials, shall contribute significantly to the body of evidence. Malta is at a stage of expanding collaborative initiatives for carefully planned academic and industry contributions to research that translates into upshots which meet ethical and regulatory requirements. The education and training programs, as well as regulatory sciences exposures that the Medicines Authority offers to professionals seeking to develop expertise in such innovative areas, are contributing to drive the impetus. In line with Malta's policy, reflected through a legal framework which governs every aspect of cannabis for medicinal use, patients are enabled access to cannabis-based products that embrace GMP principles, while research and development are endorsed to stimulate evidence-based science in this field. We have gathered and are gathered here discussing medicinal cannabis as an innovation in our day and age. Following the intermittent recognition of the treatment properties attributed to cannabis over thousands of years, this gives reassurance that we can indeed gain momentum as we age. In the words of biochemist Albert Svent-Georgi, innovation is seeing what everybody has seen and thinking what nobody has thought. This forum, integrating multidisciplinary, high-level networking, is an apposite time to all come together and take this domain a step further, mitigating untoward practices that may compromise the much anticipated scientific, academic, and clinical developments. From our end, we commit to a transparent, constructive, and effective channel of communication and tangible outcomes with all stakeholders that share our patient-centered vision. Thank you.